Well, the great thing about this story is that we're dealing with Connor MacLeod, who we as the film audience know from the first and second and third Highlanders, and then we're integrating Duncan MacLeod from the television series, who is from the same clan. In the beginning, as we open up, we get these characters together for the first time in quite some time, and yet we find out that there's a problem, but we're not quite sure exactly what the problem is.
People change.
As we go through the story, our heroes learn that there are some obstacles that are insurmountable.
We all know each other from the past. And Connor's relationship with me is he found me many, many moons ago in the Highlands of Scotland when I was just like this barbaric fighter.
I'm Connor MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod.
Connor MacLeod?
And like you, my friend, I have a hard time dying.
Who had been thrown out of his village because they found out he was immortal, but still he tried to fight with the clans. And we see the growth of their relationship between becoming a tutor pupil and then becoming more like brothers and friends and then becoming more like equals in the present day. And I think that's kind of the interesting part of this story is that relationship that we see grow throughout the movie.
The television series was shown in over 100 countries, developing its own fan base. Adrian Paul became known worldwide as a major television star, known in his world as the Highlander. You had Christopher Lambert coming from the feature side as the Highlander. It's always been our dream to bring them together into a feature.
The producers sent me a script. I read it, I liked it because it was, I mean, for me, I had the feeling that it was a different kind of action movie, much more romantic, much more focused on the inside of a character being immortal. Obviously, a lot of action and optical special effects and stuff like that, but also something a little deeper about the joys and the pains of immortality.
Sequels are a challenge in themselves in that people come in with preconceived notions. I think the fun thing for me as a filmmaker is that I get to challenge the audience. You know, they come in and they can now be an active participant in a film as opposed to just sitting back and having the experience come to them. You know, they know the characters, they know a lot about their past, their present, where they've come from, who they've been engaged with, not only from the TV series but also from the films. So now what they can do is they can look back, and we're going to add some few little nuances here and there that'll actually sort of tease the minds of the people that know about it. But the other thing that's important, I think, that we've always spoken about in a sequel is that anybody who's never seen Highlander before should be able to come into the theater, sit down, and enjoy and understand the film as though it stood by itself. And I think we've really done that with this film and this story.
I think the core story of Highlander is you have a group of rare people that have a certain quality, and they have this seed of immortality in them. And the issues of how you deal with an extended life, how you deal with the inability to establish relationships that will last the same length of time as your lifespan, the inability to have a normal family life, that you have to separate yourself apart from the rest of mankind and establish your own rules of life and living.
This is your first directing experience.
It is.
How's it been? What do you think?
Well, it's just been, I mean, it's a dream come true. Yes. And he breaks through. The same shot we'll do with Connor.
He's got something that I really appreciate in a, quote, action director.
I'll pay back. Great, yeah. Did the car go off? Yeah. How was that for you, Ox?
He's got great moves, he's got great angles, but he's also a very good actor's director.
Why don't you two guys be over here underneath, and you two guys will be from back here.
He is very clever. His indications are very smart.
Close is close, and it's good until he goes out as far as we can carry him. When they walk up from there, they need to all be single file like this.
It's not often that an action director is also a good actor's director, and he's got both.
Yeah.
So it's really a pleasure, and he's somebody very focused, very calm, which is very important, especially on a movie like this one, and he's very smart. So it's just a pleasure to communicate. You want to give him more because of that.
Connor MacLeod, as they say, was born on the shores of Loch Shield in 1536.
Duncan was born in, well, he met Connor on the battlefields in Scotland, and he became his pupil.
He's like a big brother. He is somebody, first of all, who is telling him, you are immortal. And the guy's looking at him saying, what are you talking about? I mean, I can't be immortal. He said, yes, you are immortal. I'm going to show you.
Connor was his mentor, but the relationship went through a really interesting change, which I think you'll see in this movie, which is that it went from pupil to friend to brother to mentor, father. It expanded, or it spanned a very large number of relationships in a way, and we get to the present, and it's almost as if they've both become as equal, and they're very good friends now. They're close friends, closer than probably anybody else has ever been, because they've known each other for 300 years.
I believe the relationship that Connor had with Ramirez, Sean Connery, was more like a father and son. I think here it's like there are two brothers, and it was attractive to be the quote mentor, to be the guy who is teaching him how to play with a sword, who is telling him what the dangers are, exactly what Sean was doing with me, but more on a buddy-buddy level instead of a father-son relationship.
Chris and I worked together on the series, and we had a great time then, and I've seen Christopher since, and we're kind of friends, and we kind of have the same take on life in a way. It's very funny, and in the film, I think that comes across because there's certain things you do by osmosis. You know, I mean, you both think of something at the same time, and when that happens on screen, that's a golden moment when that happens. And there are certain moments in the movie, you know, they may not be in the final cut, I don't know, but that still goes over to the actual relationship itself, that we were able to continue what our relationship was off screen as to what it was on screen.
I think it's a story of ultimate sacrifice, of brother for brother. And the relationship between Duncan MacLeod and Connor MacLeod is so strong, and the sacrifice that is involved in that has some very surprising twists.
I think what he's up to in this story is to try and find redemption. I think that's the whole thing of this story. I think it's the story of trying to save his friend, trying to save his morals, and repay something he wasn't able to repay in the past. Something happened to him in the past that unfortunately he chose to do, and it was a wrong choice, and he understands that it was a wrong choice, and now he has to face that fact. And at the same time, his friend Connor MacLeod is faced with the same problem in a greater way, and he's trying to help his friend realize what it is what life is all about. And we see the difference of how Connor MacLeod deals with the same problem, and that's where you have the difference between the two characters.
At the end, there can be only one. So, and that's exactly what was happening in number one and in the other Highlander.
Duncan MacLeod's role has changed over the years. What he saw his role to be has changed from when he was a young Scotsman in the Highlands of Scotland. What he believed there was he was a man that had to fight for his clan and had to be there, and then turned to him being a guy that fought for things that were just, and then he fought for people who would pay the right amount of money. Then he thought, maybe that's not a good idea, and his role was basically to try and help other people with what he could do. Then he realized that he didn't want to do that either. He thought that there's too much killing and too much death in this world, so he decided to live more of a peaceful life, and realized that he couldn't do that. So his role changed again, and in the 20th century, he became a man who was more resigned to who he was and what his goal was. But he again changed during the series. In the past 6 years, he went through a change where he became more of a man that wasn't as aggressive. He became a little bit more internal and Zen-like, if you like.
Duncan MacLeod is a seeker of knowledge. He's somebody who was given immortality and has really, learned to embrace it through the years. I think he's sort of evolved as a character, maybe somebody who was a little rougher around the edges in his younger years. And as he's gone on, not that he's aged, but he's certainly matured, both spiritually and emotionally.
Duncan MacLeod is an immortal who's lived 400 years. And he's been trying to find the question as to why he exists, I think. His choice in this life, I think he's found now, is that he has a choice of deciding what is right and wrong and how he wants to lead his life, and I think that's what he wants to teach other people.
Most action movies are just action, but great action movies concentrate on the characters, concentrate on a feeling, and not just go over these feelings just for the benefit of the action. And I believe Highlander is one of these movies.
Well, what's unique about it is that, Highlander and the characters who play these immortals, Christopher Lambert and Adrian Paul, they basically get to live out the fantasies that we, the audience, being mortals, dream about, talk about, wonder about. What would it be like to live 200 years ago, or in 200 years to still be alive? These guys actually go through that, and we get to actually sit back, get taken out of our lives for 2 hours, and travel through time with them. And the stories are fantastic. They're not only action stories, they're love stories, they're fantasies, and there's quite a bit of action thrown in the mix for all that. So I think it's got something for everybody.
I remember when number one opened and became gradually this cult movie, you had the action fans, but you had also a lot of women saying, yeah, but I mean, must be so difficult and so painful and so lonely to be immortal. And that's what made the difference, is that it's not only the boys crowd, it's a combination of an overall crowd who like to see Highlander.
It's a really fun form of escapism. It's something that is not remotely real, not remotely in reality, and I just think that people want to be able to escape, and so they latched on to this. It's just got such a great, I think sci-fi films tend to create more of a cult thing anyway. Because of course romantic comedies aren't really cult followings and stuff. I don't know, I just think it's just one of those good stories that has come up in this movie that people want to know what's happening next. And of course, because they are immortals, you have to know what's happening next, because of course you think that they never die, so there's always another story.
When your life spans hundreds of centuries, there are things that we take in our lives as a normal arc and deal with it that these people cannot take.
As an immortal, you constantly are faced with the fact that friends of yours are going to die. As an immortal, you basically, to become immortal, you can only become immortal with a violent death. If you just grow old and die, your immortality gene, if you like, will just disappear. Once you become immortal, the only way you can die is by a violent death. And your entire life is around friends of yours that will possibly die either a violent death or die before you growing old. So it's kind of a lonely existence in a way.
That's also what made this character attractive to people, is you need this tremendous power to say, let's not give up, let's go for it, something better is going to happen.
I guess you could look at it as a tragedy, but then I think that our characters, being the heroes that they are, sort of overcome adversity at times. And sure, there are tragic moments within their lives, but they know that they're going to go on. And I think that's what drives them to get up every morning and to, keep moving forward. So tragedy only in the sense that, each day could be tragic for each individual, but these characters know that there's always tomorrow. So tragedy can be overcome.
And I think you just are dealing with issues on such a different level. And it's not this concept of this battle down through the ages of this special group of men, and it's just one part of the story of Highlander. To me, the greater issues are how they deal with the fact that they have almost this curse of immortality.
I believe it's the closest one to number one because the writers and producers went back. They understood the importance of going back to this reflection about immortality. The need of having people and immortals thinking about the pain and the joy of being an immortal, and not just doing, you know, big fights and stuff like that. We have that, it's a given. Highlander is about sword fighting, martial arts, special effects, opticals, but you also want to see the pain and the joy of the people living this immortality factor.
Somebody asked me, would I like to be immortal? Let me think about that now. No.
I think some people probably would like living forever, but I mean, if you try and search for further meaning about life and why we are here, I don't think you're ever going to find that by living forever. I think in order to find out some of the answers as to why we're here, or why did God create us, and what it's all about is actually in the dying process, or at least I hope so. Otherwise, I mean, God, what is it all about, you know?
I definitely see it as a tragedy. The fact that you cannot establish a relationship with a woman and be able to live a normal life, to grow old with a woman and have that woman be at your side throughout your life, and to be able to have children, which are the greatest things that we as mortals have, the ability to have a family life, to have children, to see them grow up.
But I want a chance to make it right.
You want to make it right? Then give me back the ability to have children. To grow old with the man I love. How about anything that resembles a normal life?
I think that is an immense tragedy.
In some ways, you have to forget about the past. You have to live in the present. And if you are really an immortal, that's what you have to do for sure, because otherwise you're dead.
Well, you know, the game is sort of an ambiguous war, if you will. You know, it's, I mean, if you look at immortals as rivals, which in truth they are, they're always looking for the next battle in and amongst this bigger war. And, you know, to stay alive, you've got to stay alert. And at any given point, at any given day, you could be a man on the street, but the next guy coming around the corner could be somebody who's looking for you. So the game is an ongoing process, and there is no true definition to it, because for 100 years the game may be stagnant, but then in the turn of a dime, all of a sudden, there you are, and the game could be on. So you really have to be, as a Highlander character, on your toes at all times.
If you ask yourself the question, how would it be to be immortal? You got some great sides, seeing the world centuries after centuries, but you also have some terribly painful side, because all your friends, all your lovers, all the people, the family, whatever, you see them die one after the other. And so how long can you stand that kind of pain?
Christopher Lambert is such a sweetheart, and so is Adrian. But, you know, someone like Christopher, for instance, who's had such a long career, and he was very welcoming, very warm. Adrian was someone who is very serious about this character because he's lived it for 6 years. You know, I mean, if there was anyone, if you had any doubts about how you should be behaving in some sort of way as an immortal, or, you know, well, why would I do this, or how do I get to there? He knew every fact in detail to get you there. I mean, he was great motivation to play any character in the film, because he really knew it so well.
I mean, I've always asked, where do immortals come from? I mean, why are certain animals born? Why are certain species created? You know, you suddenly have dogs that look one way and dogs that look another because they live in a certain area. I can't understand. Maybe we're an aberration of nature, which the watchers, which are in this movie, happen to think we are. Some of them think we're an aberration of nature. I tend to disagree with them in that respect. But yeah, I think, you know, we just happen to be. I don't know whether we are going to constantly be recreated, because in the end
There can only be one, or there
can be only one.
only can be one. And then I kept on getting it wrong the whole time. He was just going, don't get it wrong, Lisa. It's very important.
I think the idea of becoming only one, for me, personally, what I got out of the first movie was that once you are the only one, all the essence and the knowledge of everybody else that you've had will allow you to understand all other living things around you. It will allow you to have the ability to understand the pain, the suffering, the joy, and the pleasure of everything, and possibly be able to solve answers that a lot of other people would never be able to do.
Oh, my love interest. My love interest. My love interest is played by Lisa Barbusha. Lisa plays Faith, or Kate, as I used to know her, and I keep calling her Kate because that's how Duncan MacLeod knows her as Kate, and I refuse to call her Faith. She is the only woman that I actually married, and it was for one night. And I know, it's just like the 20th century. It was just one night, and
Kate, who was Faith in the 17th century, or I should say Kate was first and then came Faith, she was just in love with Duncan, and they got married, and she was a softer person. She was a seamstress, and she was very much a lady, and then she got betrayed by him.
The story with Kate, or Faith as she's known in the present day, is one where Conor and I actually met her many, many years ago, and we also showed that she was an unborn immortal at that particular point in time when we first met her.
Kate is this lovely Irish seamstress from the 1700s, and who, although she's lovely and sweet, she also has an edge to her, and she's very witty, and she gets made into an immortal without her, you know, she doesn't willingly want to be an immortal, but in this film she marries Adrian Paul's character, and he and Christopher Lambert realize that I'm one of them, that I have the ability to become an immortal.
But she is one of the loves of my life, and what I believe this movie to be is in one word, is redemption. And I think the relationship I have with her is my problem that I had to deal with, something that I did in the past that caused me to try and solve, and that's one of the beauties of immortality, is that I have eternity in a way to be able to resolve the things that I did wrong, or we have the ability to resolve the things that we did wrong. So now I'm trying to do that in this movie. I'm trying to resolve that with her.
You then see me 300 years later, and I've just carried on all this bitterness and anger because it's something that I never wanted, and it's just like another day in this world. I never wanted to be an immortal, and life for me is just become so mundane and so boring and so nothing, you know. So as an immortal, it's a struggle to keep life interesting, and also, of course, everyone you become fond of and have a relationship with and fall in love with grows old and dies around you, and so you kind of feel like you're very alone in the world as an immortal.
She comes back to seek a resolution to that, and I have to deal with that. It's basically facing my demons. Duncan MacLeod has to face his demons in this relationship, and it's basically love lost, and we're trying to rekindle that love again. And I think it's very heartfelt and heart-rending.
He has followed her through the years but never approached her, and she kind of knows that, and she even hates him more for that. But when she sees him, she realizes that she really does love him deep down inside, and she so desperately wants him to just come forward and just say sorry, you know, and make amends. But he's just been so afraid to do that. He hasn't had the courage to do that, and he eventually will. Adrian's been wonderful with helping develop the story, because he's done the series for 6 years, I think it is, and he just knows it inside and out. It's amazing because, you know, this is my first Highlander movie, so I kind of only know vaguely bits about it, and every scene he can tell you anything about why this would have happened because of something that has happened in his past. I think a lot of attention has been paid into this movie to make sure that that the audience will understand what motivated what happens in each scene.
Lisa, I mean, I'd never worked with before. She is out of England, and she's a singer mainly, and she's acted, and we had a good time. She was very, what's the word, willing to do different stuff, to learn different stuff, and it was hard because the script kept getting changed, and we would work on stuff and try and get things so that it would make sense, and so that our relationship, because our relationship is important in this movie, to the fact that it is part of my past and my problem, that our link from the past to the present has to be clear to people so they understand why this relationship is what it is now and where it came from. So we worked hard on doing that, and you know, we had a great time working together because, you know, it was a lot of fun in that respect.
We had a lot of fun doing our love-making scenes, rolling around. It was fun. For the first hour, you're like really self-conscious because you're taking off your clothes and there are a few people on the set, and after a while you just kind of forget. It's like when you go on the beach, isn't it? You sort of first stripping down and you're looking if anyone's looking at you, and then after, you know, after the first hour you're running around on the beach half naked. So I don't have a problem with it. In fact, it was really funny because Adrian said, he goes, I could tell you've been living in Europe a long time even though you're American, because I had no problem being topless where a lot of...
The way I look at it is I'm a 17th century biker. I prey on the hapless and take their money. I'm a thief. We're here in the makeup trailer on the set of Highlander, World Without End, and this is my good friend Daniel, who's about to make me even more uglier than usual.
He's awesome. I saw him pick up a tree the other day and throw it 250 yards. It was amazing.
Just have to touch up Adam's teeth here, dry them out a bit. They look absolutely disgusting.
Well, you know, the Edge is great because he is so athletically inclined right off the bat. So we can give him anything to do. He picked up swordplay in a day. He picked up all the stunt stuff in one day. He just brings so much athleticism in that he basically is like working with a stunt man who's already an actor, or an actor who's already a stunt man. So he's like, it's the full package.
This stuff is a type of tooth enamel I make myself. And it's just to make the teeth look old and worn out. With Adam here, he's playing a bandit. And he doesn't do much about cleaning his teeth, really. There we go, that's horrible.
How's it taste?
Horrible.
He has such a presence, and being in front of an audience every night, I mean, this is like, for him, it's like being in front of an audience. He just took to it and ran with it. All he had to know was where the camera was, and he was ready to go.
Oh, coming up with some really good textured stuff to make him feel like he'd been hanging out in the woods for a while and stealing this coat from somebody and this from somebody else.
It's all stolen?
It's all stolen. It's all stolen.
He picks this huge rock up over his head and tosses it at him. And only he can do that because he's the Edge.
Oh, dear. Oh.
Looks heavy, right?
Right away, guys, right away.
I'm Jonathan Carlson. I'm the production designer on Highlander 4, and down here is a movie rock that we just finished making. It's made out of styrofoam and plaster, and we put some fake moss on it. And as you can see, it's very heavy. And just wanted to give it to our friend here and let him take care of it.
Well, it goes up easier than Bradshaw and Farouk, that's for sure. Hope you guys are watching, but this is it. So eventually I end up throwing this on someone's head, or just about anyway. It's good fun. You want it? Here.
Camera.
And set.
Whoa!
fact, I wasn't there on the shoot.
I think my opinion, and I'm putting this on record, I think this is going to be the best Highlander movie you've ever seen.
Could you explain to me what the role of your posse is, the posse in the film?
That's it. I was hoping you could tell me that, actually. I'm just kidding, Chris.
Natasha, I can see your pen or your paper. Whatever it is, whatever you're doing, I can still see it. I'm terribly sorry, Natasha, I can still see it. Thanks very much. Yes.
John set?
Set.
Alex set?
Set.
Get up!
Yes,
Here we are. Both immortal. Sorry, I'm farting. I can't do this.
And finally, can you tell me what...
SP40 for sunblock. And, the ultraviolet is quite intense, but we have pina coladas and deck chairs. As you can see, it's splendid. This is actually a spa that we all come to just for relaxation between prayers.
Not where I'm eating.
Do you see this as an extension of the features or an extension of the TV show?
I think...
To love it here. And that'll be $7, please.
Well, there's a lot of sword fighting in this movie.
I want you to think back to this moment caught in the endless night
A lot of different sword styles. I think it's going to be very interesting because we've also used not only swords, we've used different weapons from different countries, such as India, China, America, Japan. I mean, we have a lot of different weapons that have different techniques to them. That's how immortals defeat each other, is by cutting each other's heads off. Not a pleasant way to go.
Hi, I'm F. Braun McCash. I'm the sword master for this film and was the sword master for 4 years of the television series. Basically, the job that I do is choreograph all of the fights that involve bladed weapons, teach the actors how to execute the fights, then help supervise the filming of them. What we were just doing with Edge was walking through at about half speed the sword fight that he's going to be doing with Christophe Lambert.
There's a bunch of different maneuvers that I still don't really know all the names of, but I know I parried once. And it's one of those things where at first, the first time you do it each day, you're not as aggressive as by the end of the day, you're just going pretty much full steam ahead. So that time we did it, and it was the first walk through the day, and it's remembering all the movements. There's so many different movements. It's hard to remember, and plus too, you're almost afraid that you're going to actually deck somebody with it, but it's fun.
Also very precise, so that when a blow is supposed to come for the shoulder or the hip, that it comes consistently to the shoulder and the hip all the time, so the actor defending doesn't have to hunt for it with the parry.
We just did some basic movements to the shoulder, make sure your wrist is straight. There's so many different things that go into it, which I didn't realize. And a lot of it has to do with the wrist and the elbow. You try not to use the shoulder too much. But I'm still definitely an amateur at it, but F helped me out quite a bit.
Edge is very adept. He's obviously used to learning physical action and handles it quite well for a person who's never touched a sword before. Haven't had a chance to work with him a lot, but every time I do, he shows noted improvement and picks up things very, very quickly. But when we actually do this fight, obviously, the moves have got to be subconscious. You can't be thinking of what move you're going to do next, because if you are, you can't free yourself as an actor to react to the situation. So it has to be sort of consigned to muscle memory, and that means rehearsing the fight dozens and dozens and dozens of times and building up the speed very, very gradually.
Basically, I'm training, 10 to 12 weeks before the movie, and I'm training on specific moves. It's like when you rehearse the sword fight, you have a routine, and you have to train and train and train till this routine becomes automatic, because you have to forget about it so you can make it believable.
Christophe Lambert is wonderful. He's a very professional man, very, very careful in what he does, and always open to suggestions, opinions, anything that will make his performance better.
Jump in comes, and you grab his hilt. Step back, step back. Whoa. There you go, there you go.
Adrian Paul I worked with for 4 years when I was the swordmaster for the television series Highlander, and he is, without a doubt, the best stage combat person I've ever worked with.
His hand, and on my hand, you go, really? And on you, you're doing this. Don't have to, it doesn't matter what you do, you're like this, right? And on his hand, you see me go like this, and he goes, I knock it down, go, boom, he goes, boom, the thing goes to here like this, and he goes, whack, and I go, boom, fall to the ground, now pay up, right? I think because the end has to be that. Yeah.
I have yet to find a move that he can't do, regardless of how complex, how fast, how strenuous. And it is strenuous, because you are doing hours of rehearsal, and then when you're filming sword fights, you're filming them again and again and again. Each take, each little section, each section, large sections as a whole. These guys are in good physical condition too, and of course just the memory, the ability to learn not just one sword fight, but sometimes to have to keep several sword fights with all of the moves in your head at the same time, because you might be shooting one on Tuesday, Wednesday you're shooting a different fight. So it's very challenging for the actor, and both of these gentlemen more than come up to the challenge.
When the swords are going
down, what are you doing down?
You do one of those? Like here, and we go,
Yeah,
exactly, something like that. We need these moments.
The interesting thing about the sword work for me, I mean, we were in this particular film, we were very specific as to each single time we picked up a sword and what time period we were in as to the method that we would use it. So you will see we use the weapons differently in different time periods, which goes with whatever that, again, that takes it back to the question before, which is about the past. How was everyday life in the past? Well, that's how they dealt with it. In the present day, when you deal with sword work that we wanted to create something in the present day which is more the East meets West type of action stuff. So we would do some stunts and stuff that would be included within the sword work, but were not so far fantasy that made it unbelievable. And I mean, you're dealing with a lot of effects, explosions and hits and stuff like that. And the swords are metal; they'll bust your skin, and they have.
It does combine a tremendous number of sword styles. First of all, we have historical flashbacks in the 1500s, the 1600s, and the 1700s. These are military weapons from the 1780s. Every different type of sword from history is used in a different way because of the design of its grip, the design of its blade. So no two historical styles are identical. They have things that are superficially similar, but that's all. The main characters also use Japanese swords, the katana, Connor and Duncan MacLeod, so that fighting style is extremely different. They're also 400 years old or more, so that they use styles not only from the East, but from Western Europe, from anywhere they can, because they are centuries old. And we also have martial arts coordinators on this film that do an awful lot of the unarmed combat and choreograph the kung fu and karate style scenes. So we have quite a bit of input, a lot of people working very, very hard to make the actors look good and keep them safe.
Well,
Well, the posse really, it's kind of an interesting area in the fact that they are fellow immortals that my character, the way it's written, has, if you were brought along with him almost as a part of his accoutrement, his selective few.
Winston is basically an old slave from Jamaica who has been roaming the earth for over 500 years.
It's like a gang, and it's a fraternity of immortals that do Kel's bidding for him, which is taking heads and doing the dirty work for him.
My character, his name is Jin K. This character is actually exists in Chinese history. He was an assassin. He believes the mission for his assassin was to overturn the whole dynasty.
Jin K, who served with the Emperor Qin.
The same man. And this character, Jin K, in the Highlander films, is actually doing the same thing. He's trying to kill Kel, the antagonist, Bruce Payne, trying to overturn the dynasty.
Kel's posse consists of 5 guys from different parts of the world. You have Cracker Bob, who's basically from nowhere. You know, you're all American. He could be from Texas, it could be from New York. Just crazy, just out there, you know. You have Damon Dash for Brooklyn. He's plays Carlos. He's basically another loose cannon who's, you know, one of those kind of guys that just hot-tempered. You know, he basically have to keep an eye on him, which I do a lot in the movie before he expires. You have Manny. Manny's from Hawaii. You know, his boys are just basically from every part of the world. Because this way he gets to keep an eye on, you know, on everybody. You know, we're not all from the same place, so, you know, we're not liable to double-cross him. You know what I mean? We all want the same thing. We're all going for the same goal. So that's basically his crew, his posse.
In the series, we did martial arts. I mean, I studied martial arts for about 12 years now. My style that I do, which is Hung Gar, I've done for about 8 years. And my teacher, Vernon Rieta, is with me to enhance the style that I already have.
Here. All right, so if I'm like that then the next shot he has, he pulls down here, which I have to do this to, like this. Is that block, and he comes here and I do this.
And on top of that, we also have Donnie Yen, who is a very good martial artist from Hong Kong, who has come in to lend his style and his ideas on shooting a martial art blend. I would like to say we have a blend of East meets West in this movie.
Well, first of all, this is the first English-speaking film for me. I've been doing Hong Kong-style films for the past 17 years, and this is the first film for me. And in the beginning, I find it a little different, you know, the way we work over in Hong Kong as opposed to Hollywood films. The budget is huge difference. We do not have the kind of budget that the average Hollywood films fortunately has.
It's not a Hong Kong style entirely, but it's not a Western movie entirely either. And I think that's kind of what's interesting about it.
I was also hired as the martial art choreographer because of the success of many other Hollywood films where they're putting the certain Hong Kong martial art flavor into the films. It would eventually gives it a new flavor to the whole picture. And that's exactly what I did with it, trying to collaborate the very Hong Kong martial art style into the original Highlander.
I never really actually had the chance to show a lot of hand techniques, and we have in this movie Donnie Yen, who is a very good martial artist from Hong Kong. And at the same time, I wanted to increase my hand stuff. So my teacher, Vernon Rieta, came to give me my style that I could use in this movie, and we could incorporate not only just doing hand techniques hand to hand, but also using hand, feet, and weapon at the same time.
Yeah, I'll do this. And he turns this way. And I should do this, because it's two shots. Right. So unless I'm doing this like this, which is better.
Adrian had studied martial art for at least 11 years, and about eight of that years has been with me. Studying a style called Hung Gar or Charlie Fat, and this style is really a Shaolin-based Kung Fu style that has its origination in the Buddhist temple. So by looking at it, it seems like we're looking at violence, but where we what stems to be the vital energy is peace and tranquility. It's hard for you to understand that by looking at the weapons that is swinging around, but the real reality of it is that peace and tranquility through the monks, to body physiology, to the understanding of what makes you work for longevity. If protecting yourself is longevity, by all means, it's a good basis to start from.
I'm a perfectionist, so when I work, regardless of a different environment or different dialogues, or I have different actors which I play against, I try to do the best I can. And as a martial art choreographer, I try to choreograph as best I can and try to bring the experience that I gather for many years working in Hong Kong and trying to incorporate with this whole crew here. I mean, I call the Hong Kong filmmaking very guerrilla filmmaking. So opposed to this is professional.
The idea was also to create a different style for Connor MacLeod and Duncan MacLeod. So they are like the yin and yang of the Chinese symbol of wholeness. And I think we've created that. I think it's taken a lot of work and a lot of sore shoulders, actually. I think we've created that, and I think it was some of the most exciting fight sequences I've ever been involved in.
Action! And cut.
It takes time to rehearse, it takes time to assimilate, because it has to become automatic, therefore it's less dangerous, and also it looks good. So, you know, I've been doing that now for the fourth time, and not to say I'm used to it, at least I know the process of how to learn the moves and the fights and you know what's around these fights. So it's I'm viewing it like fun more than a challenge.
Action! And cut. Cut it!
Yeah, I mean, on this film, I still have a scar on this hand. Bruce Payne got me on this one. And I've been hit several times. I have stitches in a few different places.
Oh, shit. Right? How bad you want? This is fucked up. This is fucked up.
I guess it's part and parcel of what I do, so, and I kind of enjoy it. It's sick, really. It's like being a stuntman. And why do I throw myself off a six-story building? Because I kind of get the adrenaline rush. Well, I kind of do the same thing when I do Highlander. I enjoy doing sword work, I enjoy action, and I enjoy movement. So that's part of why I guess I got this job.
The reality of any action has to be true to form in order for it to be real.
I'm not the type of person that wants to go out and kick ass, if you like. Can I say ass on TV? But I like it for my own self, my own self-discipline, and for, you know, my own protection, if you like.
I come from a dance training. I used to be a ballet dancer when I was younger, so it was quite easy to do some of the fly kicks that I had to do. A lot of the stunt stuff, of course, was done by a stunt double, and it's something that I would never even attempt to do.
Who are they?
Friends. I was just kind of almost like part of the ringleader.
Faith, I told you I look like a fucking orange!
Sandra's the new black, Bob. Trust me.
For me, it was a dream come true because I saw that movie when I was 7. I was a kid, and I remember the first one with Christopher Lambert in the parking lot, and the mood and the soundtrack from Queen. You know, you just can't get away from it. So this, to me, was a dream come true because actually the guy that actually taught me martial arts many years ago said one of his favorite movie was The Highlander. And I said, wow, you know, here is my martial art teacher telling me one of my favorite movies is The Highlander. And I could see a guy like you doing movies like that. And a couple of years down the road, I get this call from Miramax saying, you know, we've seen your stuff in the past and we think you're a right candidate.
Prendi il panno nero per alzare un po' la... Alex, non la smanchi, non sarebbe...
Hey, Duncan, what's the matter?
The British destroyed the Grand's Corner.
It's a whole new ball game now. Get off!
Who are they?
Friends.
What, it's a team sport now?
What you didn't know? Whole new ball game.
Hey!
Nice bat.
We are hot! Fire in the hole! Fire in the hole! Action! Action! Action.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
Head cut.
Alright, today we blow up the set. Here we are. We built this set, it took us 3 months to build. Now we blow it up. Easy come, easy go. It's Hollywood. Okay, ready?
Roll camera 1. Camera 2. Camera 3. Camera 4. Camera 5. Camera 6.
Everything rolling. Yeah, right.
And action!
Mergem în continuare, iau și aparat bun. De la mine vă să iau asta.
Important thing we had to accomplish was to get across the concept of maintaining the integrity of how the immortals exist in the Highlander legend, how immortals die, how their victors amass power, and that type of thing. The next most important thing we had to accomplish is, of course, everyone knows the MacLeod clan comes from Scotland. And of course we shot this film in Romania, so we had to take a backlot of a little stage and studio in Romania and turn that into Scotland.
You're going to see a progression of these visual effects from both from the Avid all the way through to the final effects.
You will see things that say temp and final. That basically indicates that we've started out with a progression. Some go to film as we get to a little more final stage, but as you're seeing right here, we had a backlot in Romania that, of course, was not Scotland, was not the village that existed in the movie, and we had to take this and turn it into the village that we wanted to have in the movie for Highlander Endgame.
The scene where he comes and looks down on, Connor looks down on the village, had several incarnations, not the least of which was a scene where he did not go to jail and in fact rode up on a horse and looked down on the village to see his mother at the stake. That eventually was dropped to what the original concept was, in which he sees the village down there and goes to his mother's house.
The important thing was to tie the village into the castle that was used in the first movies, which of course was the Ealing Donan that actually exists in Scotland. We recreated that castle entirely digital. First you saw what we call a grayscale model, and then a slightly more advanced version with textures, and tied it into the actual village. Decided to move the village a little closer to the castle. Then as things sort of progressed, we were changing the lighting based on how the editors needed to fit it in the particular movie, the way Michael had said. Basically, it was originally going to be at night in fire, and then, of course, it became a different time of day. We also realized that, of course, from the first movie, it was a slightly different positioning. So what actually ended up in the movie was something
completely different, which is a scene from the original Highlander in which we digitally removed Connor strapped to a log. This was shot in Scotland, some second unit helicopter footage that was shot after, much later into post-production. We wanted to have this image of Connor, this heroic image of Connor riding up.
And you'll notice right about now also the helicopter blades at the top of the frame, which were a problem that we had to get rid of.
We weren't as crazy about this shot, and the helicopter blades actually became a wonderful excuse to do something a little more exciting.
In every movie, the hero, Christopher Lambert, has to ride off into the sunset, and in the previous shot, there was no sunset. So, as well as, and you see in this shot, it's a lot darker because at one point it was going to be a night scene, and we wanted to have that drama of the color, but with a night scene. And finally, the magic hour, which of course is the most beautiful time of the day, the wonderful editors figured out a way to make that work.
It's a piece of stock footage, sunset or sunrise put into the sky.
This is an early attempt that we were trying out with the visual effects, and that's Duncan MacLeod's reflection in the sword.
And then going to Connor MacLeod, we never were quite certain what this became. We ultimately went to something much simpler, a simple dissolve that goes from the scene into modern day, from the Italian scene into modern day.
Through the history and the legend of the Highlanders, the most notorious effect, of course, were the transitions which bring people back and forth from present day to previous time. So whether the transition is really dramatic or simple, what had to be done is a transition that takes you back in time so the audience understands where they are and they're not in modern day anymore.
I love the DVD.
And on the last shot, you did see a little bit of a reflection.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, it was something we never...
That was a residual effect, left over.
It was something we never quite came up with.
And also, when you see the term film out, that is the first time it goes from a digital file to a film process.
Rod Dean was one of our editors on the picture, and we wanted very much to have a Jin Key introduction that was exciting. He played with that quite a bit. Like the sword transition, we found ourselves going with something much simpler, which was music, nice music, and a series of jump cuts. Headless Carlos.
In this loft sequence, not only, of course, did we want to show the fact that our bad guy, that Kel, has decapitated one of his cronies, but we also wanted to show the transition of energy from Carlos to Kel. So basically what we had to first do is, of course, remove his head. Then we realized that we obviously didn't want to get bloody, but we wanted to show energy seeping out of his body and going into Kel so that Kel would start amassing power. So right here in this two-shot, you not only see the power coming out of Carlos, who has been decapitated by Kel, but also the energy seeping out of his body. This one actually is the daily.
This is the dailies, and you see they use a fan to blow the stuff around, so that's all you have to start with, and the rest is all digital.
We've also used interactive lighting on set so that we could actually time the effects to the interactive lighting.
One of the things you'll see in this one and throughout all these visual effects with these energy moments is...
Or flying salamis.
Or flying salamis, or whatever you want to call it. Both Scud missiles.
Tracers.
It was an attempt to do something different, keep in the spirit of the quickenings, and yet at the same time, do something a little bit different. So the salamis were the bullets, whatever you want, the torpedoes, whatever you want to call them. That was an idea, and it stuck around for a long time.
The concept we were going for, the flying salamis or the tracers or whatever, was because so often you see energy coming out of, the victim, but never really going out of the victim and directly into the person who has decapitated him to amass that power. So we wanted to see a transference of power. What we ultimately ended up with is electricity, which maintained the integrity of the original concept, which we wanted to do. Some of the swirling energy that made it a little more dynamic and organic, so that it made it a little more than what we'd done in the past. And then also we used sort of an essence that creeped out of the characters and into the person who's amassing the power.
As you can see, the dailies look pretty dry. I can pat the editors on the back and Allison, you play with it, you cut it, and when you see the sequence...
You try things, some work, some don't.
It's
usually obvious what doesn't work, and you throw it out.
As editors, we get we feel a little pressure to decide exactly what the cut's going to be early on.
So it really takes a vision with editors who have some background in visual effects and certainly some kind of imagination in order to figure out how long it's going to take this energy bolt to get from this character to that one and wrap around them. So you really need, editors like Bob and Michael to really bring that to life.
A camera marker.
B camera.
Well, Jin Ki has to die.
This is a scene that's not in our final version, but something that we tried many, many times, and you'll see it over the course of this.
The Jin Ki, the original concept of Jin Ki's death was that in an honorable way he would realize he could not possibly take on Kel and would decapitate himself so that Kel could not get his essence. It ultimately was disappointing because here you have this terrific martial artist playing Jin Ki and you don't get the chance to see the fight. We didn't have a fight shot, so what we eventually found ourselves doing is a quickened version, a very snappy version of his death. And as you can see, the playing with the dummies, trying to make the dummy head lop look exciting.
The elements that we had here was a headless body, an exact replica of the actor's head, and a live action plate of the actual actor doing the action. What this does is gets an organic movement in the live action of him actually doing the action without decapitating himself, but getting the energy going. And then what we did is cut it directly with the actual prosthetics, but ultimately it wasn't a story point that stayed.
As you can see, that we went through many incarnations of this cut. It seemed like all 6 editors worked on this scene at one time or another.
On the green screen, one of the first shots that we saw, there was something, various angles and neck, Yeah,
Yes.
could you explain
Yes,
what that is?
Absolutely. Well, the different elements that we had were, we had a tracking marker on Jinky's neck. What that allowed us to do is track things that we had to remove and replace to him so that we could remove his head from his body and use certain actions of his body falling and separate the head from the body. What we ultimately ended up doing is using the bottom part of the body. This, of course, didn't make it into the movie because of a story point. The bottom half of the body, we used the prosthetic top half, and you can see there's a number of different renditions of what we've done. You see at first the actual prosthetic underneath. You see it replaced with blood red. It was too gory. And what we ended up doing is putting a sort of a cap of something that wasn't, it was sort of meat flesh-like, and gave him some interactive lighting. So you could see the essence creeping out of him as you do as a common thread throughout the rest of the project. But, of course, it was not a story point that stayed with the movie. So ultimately the effect got finished, but you're seeing it just on the DVD.
What you just saw was Kel against a blue screen for his quickening. This, what you're seeing right now, is a plate shot. Eventually those two will be married together.
When we need to put someone in the foreground of an effect, and the effect is going to have to go behind him, instead of doing something called rotoing around him, which means basically we have to outline his entire body and put the effect behind him, what we do is put him in front of a green screen, which allows us to extract him from that green or blue screen and put him in the foreground of the other scene. So it allows us to have, you know, seamless effects happen all around him, including in front of him, without having to draw around him and put the effect behind him. And then we put whatever we want. Here is a dining room scene into the actual set and sort of surround him with the visual effects, which are the electricity.
One of the things that occurred in this sequence was a lot of explosions. There were a lot of explosions in the quickening scenes, perhaps more than I think other Highlanders.
There he's being lifted up by wires.
The concept here is that he's amassed all this power from all these henchmen that he's killed, and basically with all the interactive lighting, what we're going to do is put in all the energy and electricity that is pressing into his body and lifting him up. So right now we have to erase the wires and put all the electricity in so that it matches the interactive lighting that you see on the actual live-action plate.
And of course there will be explosions throughout this. You will see various renditions with the torpedoes flying around, the electrical torpedoes flashing through the room.
And later on we added a swirl to go around his body, which we attempted 2 or 3 different times, trying different renditions of that as well.
And the concept, though, was maintain the integrity of what we'd done in the past, which was there was an energy seeping out of these people's bodies and going into Kel, and we felt that we wanted to do something a step beyond just the electricity, because this is what we called our multiple quickening, where there was so much going on, we wanted to put more into it. So
here comes the swirls, the clouds. Film out.
Film out means we've probably done one version of it, wanted to tweak it a little because of the electricity or change the color timing or something, and when you see final, that's actually what made it into the movie. Again, you see Kel in front of a blue screen. He could also be in front of a green screen. Basically what that allows us to do is take a color that doesn't exist in his wardrobe and skin tone and extract him from that element and then use him to put him in front of a particular plate, as you see it here.
Also on the plates, you notice that you can see the heads of his henchmen down there, of his gang. Ultimately, when you put all the effects on them, although the heads were there and you could see the heads, ultimately when you put the effects on them and the lightning and comp the whole thing together, that is not what you find yourself looking at.
The whole concept that editors, I think, successfully got across is this was not about gore. What this was about is violence. He was a very mean person, one of the worst villains we've ever seen in a Highlander movie, and he had to be just a horrifying villain that was just amazingly mean. So you want to see violence, and the gore really would have detracted from that violence.
The nature of the effects create a great action, a great energy, and communicate the idea of what's going on.
And you can see on all these attempts different types of lightning. Thick lightning, thin lightning. We tried until we got something that we liked. And right at the end there, they added some more of that swirl around the table.
A major topic of discussion was lightning.
From everyone, yes.
From everybody had an opinion about the lightning.
Many chefs in the kitchen.
Here you can really see the wires very prominent, which is the first thing usually that needs to be removed.
And the interactive lighting, again, what's great about being on set is the interactive lighting gives you something to play from so that the actor is actually in the lighting scenario that you want him to be, and he will be affected ultimately by a practical lighting effect that we then can fill in and make it feel of some continuity to the actual effect that we're creating.
In the dailies, you can hear Doug, the director, calling to him what's happening, which helps the actor too.
When he gets
quite
a jolt of energy. And
it's a tribute to an actor's craft that he can be hanging by wires from a ceiling in a very cold room in Romania, and someone can yell something to him and he can live the scene as he imagines it will be.
From that vision, whether it's from the producers, the directors, or the editors, we, with the visual effects, can make that come to life as the vision that the director and producer and editors had on that day when the effect actually was not happening.
And in the final here, you hear all the sound effects that are put in afterwards, and the music. In the end, works beautifully.
And the energy lifts him. We see that it's affecting not only him, but the entire environment around him. He's controlling this environment and amassing more power at one time than just about anyone has ever done in the Highlander legend.
And earlier you saw that shot of the crucifix being zapped by lightning. That is stolen from another scene.
Mystery Sounds cover slate V82R, take 1.
All camera!
With the JVC sign, it seems like no one was really quite willing to say how that JVC sign got there, but I don't know. I didn't get my DVD or free product placement or anything. I'm not sure how that happened. Unfortunately, it became this giant advertisement.
Quite often in set dressing, you have a light or some kind of source lighting that, you know, the production designer or someone wants there for a lighting purpose, and then it ends up being so prominent that it could conceivably take away from the actual scene. So that's why it ended up being removed.
I think it's kind of nice seeing, in certain sequences, not the JVC per se, but seeing the red behind
some
Duncan
lighting
was really nice.
It gives some energy to the scene because otherwise it's all relatively dark. So, but we tried, as Bob was saying, a number of different lighting scenarios and interactive lighting and, you know, what we call God rays and volumetric lighting to make him go up into the sky and the energy transferred and whatnot, and ended up with something quite simple just because you border on hokey if you go too crazy with it. So we wanted something that was simple, that just sort of told the story point. It was about story, which is often what we want to dictate for visual effects. It's about maintaining the integrity, but it's also really about conveying what we need to tell in the story.
Yes, guys, here we go.
Mystery Sounds cover slate V82R, take 1.
When you conceive of a movie, when you write the script, when you set out to direct it and produce it, there are wonderful ideas. You shoot those ideas, and ultimately in the editing room, when the whole thing is put together, you see that some ideas don't work as well as you had hoped. The unfortunate thing with visual effects is the time it takes to have good visual effects requires you to make these decisions a little early.
Before you can do the cut.
Which was also another big factor with this film, is that we got our release date pushed up. And,
That's right.
And the thing that suffers the most is visual effects, because they need time to be nurtured and to be put out right. Unfortunately, for some of them, we either had to do away with him or live with
what existed
at the time. Literally, an extra day would have made a major difference in some of these effects.
The other tricky thing is, because there were certain story points that weren't quite working, the editors put things together. There were minor reshoots and that type of thing, which actually caused some of the scenes to change completely. So we had to create completely new visual effects for some of the scenes that didn't exist, and within a shortened time period.
No.
This is Christopher Lambert. We filmed him in slow motion falling forward. He fell onto a mat. And now for him rising out of the spirit, we did a reverse shot. We just printed it in reverse, so it looks like he's just coming up. This was a concept that we had after he was killed. We called this Connor McLeod the elevator shot, going up there. You know, we tried and tried and tried, and we did all kinds of different concepts here, and it never quite worked out, as you can see. This is an early stage.
But even as a spirit, transparent, he feels like he's just a ghost floating up. But you see, we shot him on green screen. That was so we could extract his image.
There he goes, on the elevator. Up there he goes.
Next floor, lingerie.
But again, the green screen is so we can extract his image and play with the transparency and the opacity of it to make it feel a little more ghost-like and a little more swirly. But ultimately, you know, the things we played with it were a little too ghosty.
Now, this is a shot that we flopped. There was one shot here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we flopped it right here. We just turned it around, so we just had a different perspective because we didn't have that angle. And these are attempts, again, at his spirit going up. Some worked, some they didn't work.
This stuff with Connor was shot much later in Luxembourg while he was shooting another picture, in fact.
So again, that was, you know, right at the end of the schedule when the editor saw there was a gap in the actual story. They did some last-minute shooting to sort of fill in the story, and that even shortened the time on the visual effects. So that always is kind of a tricky thing.
Adrian Paul gets zapped better than anybody I've ever seen.
I know, the best.
Look
he's
at
the
that.
best
and he's there with those
not
fireballs.
afraid of sparks.
He's right there with those fireballs. I'll tell you.
Right over his head, all around him. And
not a place I would be.
This, of course, is Adrian, who is realizing, you know, what has happened and what has transpired, and that he's basically
2, 1, 3, take 3.
killed his best friend.
This whole sequence was shot in a factory, empty factory in Luxembourg after principal photography, a few weeks before the film was due in the theaters.
I take 1.
This, too, was a concept that had been played with, the idea that he absorbs Connor's spirit and energy, and that's what enables him to defeat Kel. But how exactly you visualize that went through many incarnations.
Yes, it's always tricky to see, you know, a soul or a body go into another body and be absorbed.
So what are those little X's on the background?
The X's, because there are occasional camera movements, the X's allow us to track to it so that we can match the background up with the foreground.
And those last two shots were background plates that were shot at a different location.
The buzzing around the edge of Connor's body and Duncan's body, of course, is from the green screen being temped in the Avid, which is not a fine process.
That was shot in Luxembourg, and the background plates were shot in Romania.
You've forgotten something.
You generally want to match up angles and everything, and that's always very tricky when you're shooting them in different locations.
It can be.
The push-in on Kel for that final moment was actually stolen from a camera readjustment in the middle of a take. We didn't have a push-in on him, and we found that there was a pullback on the camera dolly adjusting for another take, and we stole that and reversed it.
Some of our temp morphs that we attempted from our Avid workstation, our Avid editing machine.
The tricky thing about these morphs too were that Christopher's face shape, hairline, and size and proportions are so different, or McLeod's are so different than Duncan's, that the transition between the two of them is actually quite difficult to make. They don't really line up great, so you have to play with some sort of tricky elastic reality and sort of mutating the actual figures to try to get them to sort of come together.
And again, these were last-minute effects, and in the film version, the morphs didn't quite work. In the theatrical release, they were there. In the DVD, we've shortened them, and
we didn't do those. That I will say, we didn't do those. There is always a process, and it's a matter of getting story points across, which sometimes an effect works or it doesn't work exactly how you had hoped, but even if it achieves the thing of getting the point across, sometimes it's more important to have it in than to have a confusing story point for the people that are watching the movie.
The game isn't over yet. What's the matter? Don't you want to be inside me?
Here, this was shot in Luxembourg, and you can see part of the railing is missing. That is jumping onto a trampoline, and you see Kelt turning, but he turned at the last minute. We had to take a shot of him and turn it from another take, so there's quite a lot of compositing here.
Actually there. They're actually, and on top of what you would normally have, which is one person doing the turn, you also have a separate person doing the flip, a separate background element, and they all had to sort of be married for timing purposes and for positioning to the same shot, and that's always quite difficult to get the timing to work for what has to happen, because of course your foreground person may not be reacting perfectly to what the other person is doing.
The lighting there is a flame bar, which is being ignited by the special effects people in the foreground to give that glow on him. In the background, we eventually put in New York with the sky on fire, and again, this went through a lot of different concepts. This was all last-minute effects, and you'll see further how the special effects team added the railing in there in the foreground.
Duncan is reacting to something that is happening in the background and the foreground, which is lightning, interactive energy happening, the sky is opening up, all kinds of crazy stuff. So the interactive lighting that we had on set, we had to match those colors in order for the background to make sense. So in other words, if you have interactive lighting on someone that's blue and you create an effect that's red, it's not going to match, and so it won't feel integrated into the scene. So you really need to match your interactive lighting and the effect that's happening with your interactive on-set effects. And that's always a tricky thing to know in advance what colors and effects you're going to want.
And here we tried with this vortex, different things, turning the sky into fire, turning water going up, turning it into flame,
spirits raining
raining down. These are things that take time. One of the areas where we just ran out of time.
That was sort of trying to get sort of a magical sort of energy that was being affected in the sky.
You can see this is a background plate that I believe was shot in London.
Again, as Bob had said, there were a number of different renditions we went through to try to get the feeling that there was the evil in the sky and it's breaking out energy-wise.
And you notice we added a little bit of the grid in the foreground, and then we tried it with the face on fire, and then face not on fire, then we wanted some lightning coming out of his mouth. And these are basically things you just have to try, and if they look good, you keep them. If not, wind up on the cutting room floor.
Or on the DVD version.
Or the DVD version, that's right. We're coming up on one of my favorite renditions of this effect. It looks like the opening of an old RKO picture, you know.
But it is a good transference of energy. I mean, you get the story point, and that's what's so important.
Yes.
And this we went through such a big problem with the lightning, with the star field in the background.
Well, like that one. There's the RKO, you know, beaming to all the ships at sea. Seemed like we just never quite got anything that satisfied us.
And this, in the next effect, I believe you will see, were the last two. These literally came in maybe 4 days before they started printing 1,500 prints of the movie, right at the end. And we basically just ran out of time, and whatever our last attempt was, that's what we had to go with.
What we all had to do is sort of band together, realize that there was a limited amount of time, but the most important thing is, in the end, we had to have the story point, which came across, which was there's a transference of energy, everything was in turmoil, and when it settled, the sky was clear, Duncan was okay, and Connor had moved on. And that kind of gets the point across. So, you know, as much as, you know, we would all probably have tweaked this for another year, we got the point across in the story, and that was then considered a success.
And here you can see, these are the dailies, without any of the effects in them. Basically, it's a sequence. And in a few seconds, you will see temp fire effects that they were trying to put in there.
Now, what Bob and I would do is take images from almost any film that we could find and do temporary comps of these different sequences. There's a super skip frame. And then, of course, we would take these different images like these and then turn them over to Allison and company and say, okay, this is kind of what we want to do.
Yeah, conveying the basic story. Sometimes it's color, sometimes it's the speed, sometimes it's the energy that you're trying to convey with the scene, but every bit of reference we can get is always helpful. There's a lot of some of the final scenes that happen actually in front of a few set pieces and a green screen, which we end up then, of course, extracting and putting in New York and effects for the final sequence.
A lot of these temp effects are done by our assistant editors who do the initial compositing. And we've had some very good ones on our show, Asa Mateen, Philip Steinman.
And this again is just that transference of energy. There were pillars of fire that went up into the sky, there was water that went up into the sky, but basically it's all about things being charged by energies that are generated by the immortals. And what we've done here is we've created a world, you know, enhanced by the visual effects, but created a world where we see all this transference of energy. And what we try to do with the visual effects is maintain the integrity and keep a common thread that makes sense throughout the storyline.
And in that last version, you saw a close-up of Adrian Paul. In our theatrical release, that was the shot we used that had the morph in it, which didn't quite turn out so well, and we minimized it on the DVD version.
Ah, the final.
This was shot just outside of Bucharest, Romania.
On a bad dolly.
Allison, could you explain the flags in the background?
Absolutely. What the flags, and actually it's hard to see here, but there is actually an X on that. What that enables us to do is understand where the horizon is, where our foreground element, which of course is Duncan, is, and how we can track the background sky or replacement sky into the actual image. What that gives us the reference on is how when the camera goes in on those perpendicular lines, it gives us a parallax that we can track to because we understand how the distortion of the X actually changes. In less technical terms, just basically means we see how the X changes, we create the X in our computer, and we can compare the two and then track to the differential. That makes sense.
Yet another scene that went through a number of incarnations.
The tricky thing here is there were some mountains that were in some of the previous movies.
That's a still frame.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually from Scotland, but it wound up looking like the Swiss Alps.
Swiss Alps, exactly.
So we wanted to redo that.
So again, this scene actually went through a number of different renditions.
Dolly track on the left.
Yes, which had to be removed because this was just a very temporary shot to see how it would look with the very snowy mountains in it. This is actually part of the Highlands that actually are very similar to the ones used in the first movie, but these just happen to look, as Bob said, like the Swiss Alps. So we played with a number of different versions. Also, because of the lighting exterior, which was sort of a drab day, the grass was a relatively drab looking, and the entire scene felt a little flat. So
they went back and reshot some of Scotland.
Here's the from the
and
earlier
these
scene.
were things taken from various angles and kind of patched together, piecework together.
this is us enhancing the foreground grass image. As you remember, the other was very drab looking, and just sort of patching in some green rolling hills to see if
the
these
dolly
felt
track,
better.
camera dolly track on the left. And this was the actual last visual effects that we got, again, literally days before it was in the movie theaters.
If I'm not mistaken, this stuff was shot in
tried
July.
we tried to make it moody
Yeah.
here.
And we were in the theaters about 5 weeks later.
Yes, exactly.
And here's a final, and you can still see it still needed some color correcting,
Absolutely.
which we had to live with. Had we had a few more days, we would have,
Just made minor modifications.
and it would have been better. We did improve the color timing a little better in the DVD version.
And made the grass a little
Mm-hmm.
greener, because as you saw in the previous original plates, they were really drab. Sort of trying to bring it to life.
I think that's it. Farewell.
Thank you.
Yippee!
Right, are you alright? Right.
Cut it.
Got it? How was that?
That was.
Action!
Merge în continuare, au și aparat bun. De la mine pot să iau asta. Când fac niște mizerie pe el, în regulă.
N-am scos aerul din varibeg?
Nu.
The first punch time, boom, drop, 3, hit, drop. 1, 2, this way here, hit this here. He blocks that, then he goes for that kick. That first kick, which is the block here, and then this one here, which is this. It's this part here, since I'm in this action here, right? No, I come in. Once he's done that sweep, once he does that sweep there, I was coming, remember I was coming in from this? Right. Oh, wait a minute, yeah, I do that. Sorry, I do this shot, and then I did this. Right. So it was this shot. Right. So it was my shot. I'm doing this shot, I'm doing this. And he turns this way. And then I should do this, because it's two shots. Right. So unless I'm doing this like this. I think it's better. Bring that in. Yeah, bring that in. So bring it in like this, or bring it in first? Yeah. Okay. Here. All right. So if I'm like that, then Then the next shot he has, he pulls down here, which I have to do this to, like this. It's that block, and he comes here and I do this.
Okay guys, nobody else comes in now, please. Let's rehearse it. Start. And cut. Cut it. Hit me. Set guys? Set. Action! And cut. Got it. What is it, team sport now? Whole new ball game now. Game on! Cut. Everyone all right? Okay. Who are they? Somebody order a club sandwich? I got it too. Oh, they look like an orange. What is it, team sport now? It's the whole new ball game now.
Get off!
Big camera. That. Good, Jim. Action! Good cut. Good cut. Big camera. All the way here, guys. All the way here. Action!
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
Set. Set. Action! Whoa, good. Cut. Roll sound. Action! Cut! Cut, right away, guys. Big camera. Action! Cut!
Good morning and welcome to the set of fighting. Today we are going to not doing any fighting, which is very good. The only thing that's going to happen is I'm going to fall through that window. Well, actually, I'm not. My stunt double is.
38, Eric George, take one. Marker.
Set. Set. Action! Got it! Here we go. Let's go from there, Jeff. And action! Good!
Action. Good. Action.
I thought you might be the water horse. Can't you take Moody's back and drown me in the loch?
Watch this, I'll do it for you. Come with me. When he comes to you, step back. Right now you're standing still, not doing this, right? When he comes to you, you're coming towards him. I know the first one. Stop. Come to me. See what I'm saying? You've got to advance on me. Go. Walk. Is the next one? No. Walk. You don't have to go that far.
Rock's fine. It's actually.
Ah, come on.
Yeah,
I'm going to get a lighter rock for you, man. I can see you starting to quiver.
It's all about 5 pounds.
Exactly.
With that, I'm in trouble.
You might want to work. That. A little bit of. Thank you.
Yeah. Look at him, man. Then instead of looking at the blade, look at him. Okay.
Oh, you're looking like you lost your edge, lad.
Nice.
Thank you.
Oh, hello.
Y tus trailers. Visita mi canal.
Looks heavy, huh?
Hey, looks like you lost your edge, lad. Well, it could be lasting a moment, don't you think? Could be. It could be. Oh dear.
5. A camera marking.
Action.
Oh, Mr. X. Or would it be Little X?
Oh, very nice.
Thank you.
What do we have here?
Maybe another one for the face.